You're listening to A Slice of Therapy with me, Alun Parry. So on the internet where all funny clips reside, I saw a video clip recently and it's of a man doing a magic trick on, I think it was an orangutan, one of our fellow apes anyway, but I think it was an orangutan. And so this man performs a magic trick for the orangutan. You may have seen it. And he starts off with this object, might have been a coin, and it's pretty obvious if you follow the path of the coin where it should end up and that it should still be in his hand at this next sort of moment in time. And it's clearly what the orangutan is expecting, and then suddenly it's not there. It's vanished. And the fun part of the clip is that the orangutan reacts in complete astonishment. Its eyes go massive, its mouth falls open, and it looks really surprised. And the thing about these magic tricks is, as I watch it, I was thinking to myself, what if, rather than making a playing card or a coin or even a rabbit in a hat disappear, what if we could make the effects of trauma disappear in a very similar kind of way, almost as if by magic? Well, in this episode, I want to take you through the steps for how magic works. And I then want to apply those steps so that you can see how it's possible for trauma and the effects of trauma to vanish also as if by magic. Now, the 3 steps that are crucial to a magic trick is, first of all, our prediction. Second of all, is some sort of event, you might say, that helps to kind of undermine that prediction. And thirdly, surprise. So let's take each of those in turn. The first thing is our prediction. Now, in order for the magic trick to work, the only way it can work is if the magician is able to break the prediction. So if you think, for example, of any trick that you might have seen, what the person doing the trick ensures is that you have some sort of prediction. I don't know, they might put a ball underneath one of the cups. And so our standard expectation by the laws of physics is that when the cup is picked up again, the ball will still be there. And so the whole game of magic, involves us having a prediction for the magician to break. Comedy works in pretty much the same way. Your standard joke format starts off with a prediction that the comedian will then break. You'll have a setup and then there'll be a surprising punchline. And so it's crucial that we make a prediction, and that's not a difficult thing because our brains are basically prediction machines. I've spoken about this before on the podcast, haven't I? Where rather than our brains being something that reacts to events, it's constantly trying to predict what we need next. And so in any moment that happens, it's always trying to predict what's going to happen next. So our body is resourced accordingly to enable us to do that. And the example I always give is it's why, for instance, we never faint when we stand up. Unless something's gone wrong, obviously, but typically we'll stand up and we don't faint. And that's because our body's already successfully predicted that we're going to stand up. And so it's given us all the physical resources in all the right places to ensure that we don't faint and fall over. So the first step is there needs to be a prediction. You put the ball under the cup, the ball should be there, shouldn't it? So that's the prediction that the person doing the magic trick sets up. The second, though, is some sort of event happens which is going to enable the third trigger of surprise to occur. Now, in a magic trick, that event, that stage 2 that enables surprise to occur is misdirection. So there'll be some kind of sleight of hand will go on from the magician, where our eyes will be taken off something just for a quick moment, and will be misdirected towards this hand, and then surreptitiously the other hand does something clever. And so there's that middle event that takes us from prediction to surprise. There's that kind of thing that bridges the two. In a magic trick, it's that kind of misdirection, sleight of hand, or whatever it happens to be, which gets our attention in one direction, only to give the magician the opportunity to create some sort of change that will generate the surprise. And then the third step is that surprise. Now, if it wasn't surprising, it wouldn't be much of a trick. So, I don't know, let's say, for instance, I put a bar of chocolate in the fridge, and then while you watch, I open the fridge, and lo and behold, there's still a bar of chocolate there. Now, that'd be a terrible trick. A good trick is where the bar of chocolate is no longer there. You open the fridge and say, well, where is it? And so that element of surprise is essential to any magic trick. And if there is no sense of surprise, well, it isn't a magic trick. And so you've got these 3 steps there. You've got our prediction in the first place. You've got some event, which in a magic trick is some kind of form of misdirection. And then thirdly, we've got the surprise. And it's that sense of, wow, what just happened? It's the astonishment on the face of the orangutan, in fact, that makes the trick. So that's how a magic trick works. And so if we wanted to get rid of the effects of our trauma, as if by magic, is that possible? Well, the answer to that is yes, and it actually follows a very similar kind of format and structure. So let me go through those 3 steps before: prediction, event, and surprise. They're the 3 steps of magic. So if we want the effects of our trauma to disappear by magic as well, we have to engender really that same result of surprise. Now, there's a number of ways in which we can do that, but I'm going to show you one of my favourite ways of doing that, which is really, really effective with my clients. So the first step, as we saw, is prediction. Now, in a magic trick, it might be I put the ball under the cup, so the ball should be there when I lift the cup up. That's the prediction there. But in our lives, we'll make all sorts of predictions based on what we've gone through, what our history is. And so this idea of making predictions, it's what the brain does anyway, but we'll have a set of predictions. So it might be, if I'm too visible, for instance, then this bad thing will happen. If I state my needs, then this bad thing will happen. If I put myself forward for that opportunity, then this bad thing will happen. So we might have a set of predictions which are kind of limiting to us, which is why we're trying to work through them in the first place. But there'll also be, as well as those more kind of, if you like, cognitive predictions, where we figured out what the kind of interrelational laws of physics are. There's also predictions that our body makes independent of us. So there'll be times, for instance, where our nervous system will really activate and speed up because it's making a prediction that we're under some sort of lack of safety or threat. And so there's a prediction which is kind of cognitive, which is a sense of our beliefs about the world, about what will happen if we do certain things, and so we need to limit ourselves so the bad thing doesn't happen. But there's also those bodily predictions that almost feel like they're happening to us, where we can really spike or shut down. And so the prediction stage is already inbuilt. That's what we kind of come with, these set of predictions, some of which are bodily and some of which are not. So the second stage is that event. In a magic trick, it's misdirection. It's the sleight of hand thing. But the event in terms of the process that I'm talking about, where the effects of trauma disappear rather than, say, a playing card, that event is an imaginal recreation of things how you need them to be. Now, this sounds really, really strange, but there are two ways to have experiences. One is to have them, and two is to imagine having them. Now, the thing about imagining having an experience is that our body's nervous systems can't really tell the difference. It's part of the reason why if you see something scary on TV, you'll actually feel scared, even though logically and intellectually, you know that that's just make-believe, you know that that's just actors on a TV screen, but your nervous system is just responding to what it's seeing in front of it. And in a similar way, we can play make-believe with ourselves and give ourselves an imaginal experience that gives us exactly what we need. And so let's say, for instance, we've come to therapy because we've got these effects of trauma, because something happened to us in our past, for instance, and that experience gave us this set of feelings and emotions and beliefs. By using the imagination in this way, we can actually give ourselves exactly what we do need. And so, whereas a magician might use misdirection, me as a therapist will use imaginal experiences aimed specifically, targeted to give you what you didn't get first time round, but what you're still needing. Now, the thing is, that brings about the third step. That brings about some kind of surprise to your nervous system. It brings about some sort of surprise to you. Because whenever you think about this thing in the past, whenever you go back there, it will trigger all sorts of different bodily impacts. It'll trigger certain beliefs. Even when you're in a situation that feels or just resembles that original moment, your body will kind of energize in the same way as it did back then. And so for you now to get what you need through this imaginal experience creates some sense of surprise, some sense of like contradiction. And in that moment of contradiction, what happens is that your brain really takes notice. So if you were to start, for instance, just activating some of the ways that you would normally respond by this past event, but then take yourself to a place where you take that prediction, give yourself the imaginal experience that you need, your system will be in a state of surprise. It'll be like the orangutan, for instance, when the object disappeared. Because it'd be like, oh, okay, this is different. And when something is different, when there's an anomaly like that, your brain and your system really pays attention. It's part of what we call learning. And so using the same steps, really, almost like a magic trick of prediction, event, and surprise, that surprise effectively rewrites the old system. Now, it's something that was discovered about 20 years ago that most therapists still don't know about, called memory reconsolidation. And it's where you can take the old responses and completely overwrite them. And the wonderful thing about this, which is why I say that the effects of trauma disappear as if like magic, the wonderful thing is that because it's overwritten, it doesn't come back. It's like taping over a cassette, for instance. It's overwritten so it can't come back. And so the two key tests to know whether this magic trick has worked or not is, does the change last? Because if it's been overwritten, it should do. And secondly, does it need no effort in order to maintain that change? Because, there's lots of different therapeutic techniques, and they'll say, right, you have to do this every day. This is your homework now. Well, you don't have to do this when the trauma's been taken away as if by magic. So when memory reconsolidation happens, when you've rewritten the responses and the beliefs of the old trauma, it's been completely overwritten and erased. And so therefore, there won't be any ongoing effort to maintain it. It'll be effortless and it will last. So let's just have a recap. We saw, didn't we, how surprised the orangutan was when it expected the coin to be there and it wasn't. And we saw how in magic, there are 3 clear steps. There's prediction. There is then the event. In a magic trick, it's misdirection or sleight of hand. And that event then generates a sense of surprise in us. In therapy, when we erase trauma through memory reconsolidation, this thing that most therapists don't know, although there's lots of ways in which you can do it, my favourite way also involves these 3 steps. You start off with the prediction. Now, the prediction is the set of feelings and beliefs that are triggered whenever you think about a situation that resembles something traumatic that happened to you. The event is not misdirection, but an imaginal experience that gives you what you actually need instead. And that's the thing that generates the 3rd step, which is the surprise. And in that moment of surprise, what is capable of happening then is that the brain and your bodily system notices the difference and completely overwrites the old responses. Now, this is really revolutionary, as we saw, because it's transformational. It doesn't just give you another option, because another option means that your first set of responses, especially under incredible stress, are likely to come back. But this is overwriting. Remember the old VHS tapes or a cassette tape? If you overwrote that movie or that song, that wasn't coming back. And that's exactly what this does as well. Just like the rabbit is no longer in the hat, the effect of the trauma is no longer there either. And so what this provides and gives hope for, and which I see work over and over and over again with my clients, is truly transformational change, where the effects of the trauma vanish just like magic. If you found this episode useful, please do share it so other people can get the benefits as well. If you'd like to work with me directly, I'm Alun Parry, and you can find more about me at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. And of course, you don't have to be local to me because I work online, so you can be based absolutely anywhere. And of course, please subscribe to the podcast as well, because it's absolutely free and it means that you'll never miss an episode again. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you again on the next one.